Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting for June the 11th. I need to read this intro. The Budget and Finance Committee meeting will limit physical access in the meeting room due to current limitations on public gatherings. Accommodations have been made to ensure that the public is able to participate in the meeting.
The public may participate in the following ways. Watch the meeting on Franklin TV or the City of Franklin website. Watch the live stream through the City of Franklin Facebook and YouTube accounts. Call into the conference meeting 615-550-8420. Callers will be unmuted and given an opportunity to comment during the meeting at specific times. Limited viewing will be available in the lobby in the lobby of City Hall to watch the live video. The public may email comments and questions prior to the start of the meeting to recorder at franklin.gov to be read aloud. City YouTube, www.youtube.com/user-City of Franklin. City of Franklin Facebook Live, www.facebook.com, City of Franklin, and the city website, which is www.franklintn.gov, Franklin, Tennessee TV. Next item on the agenda is this resolution. Alderman Speedy, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Alderman Bransford. Alderman Bransford cannot communicate.
I'm here. Yes, I'm here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
And the chair is here. Next item on the agenda is consideration of resolution 2020-87, a resolution declaring that the Budget and Finance Committee shall meet on June the 11th, 2020 and conduct its essential business by electronic means rather than being required to gather a quorum of the members physically present in the same location because it is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 outbreak. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Alderman Peters and Alderman Speedy makes the second. Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You're on now. Okay. Second item on the agenda is consideration of approval of minutes of the May 14th, 2020 Budget and Finance Committee meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Proper motion. And there is a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. How's that? All right. New business, consideration of resolution 20-69, a resolution adopting a revised purchasing policy for City of Franklin procurements not pertaining to new construction. Who is addressing that item?
Mr. Chair, Brian Wilcox, our purchasing manager, will be addressing this item.
Thank you, Christine, and good afternoon to the chairman and the members of the committee. Staff recommends that the purchasing policy for City of Franklin procurements not pertaining to new construction be revised in the following 3 substantive ways, in addition to numerous non-substantive ways. The first is identify purchases made during a declared state of emergency that applies to the city as another circumstance under which competitive pricing is not required, but only if specific conditions prevent the establishment of competitive pricing. Second substantive suggested revision is to allow for the use of the sole source basis for pricing when advantageous to the city, even if another policy compliant basis for pricing is known to be available. And thirdly, to allow during a declared state of emergency that applies to the city for the suspension by the city administrator of the purchasing policy and or by the purchasing manager of the standard purchasing procedures administered by the purchasing manager, and the implementation of temporary policies and procedures as circumstances warrant. As I mentioned before, there are numerous non-substantive changes as well. Resolution 2020-69 as proposed, including the revised policy as proposed, is attached. Also attached is a redlined version of the revised policy as proposed. This redline version has marked all recommended changes to the text of the policy. So staff recommends that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve Resolution 2020-69, a resolution adopting a revised purchasing policy for City of Franklin procurements not pertaining to new construction. I would be glad to address questions if I may.
Any questions from any of the committee members?
Just thanks for the red line.
You're welcome. I find that helpful, especially if you're curious to know what other changes have been made.
Well, I also think in light of what we have experienced in the last few months, I think this is quite appropriate to update and to bring this to us. And I'm in agreement with everything that is being recommended.
Thank you, Alderman Bransford. I would share that thought that the current circumstances, if somebody had told me a month or two before they had started to unfold that was in our future, I would have thought they were
right.
And here we are. It just goes to show how policies need to be nimble, and we need a little bit of flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances. But at the same time, as I tried to summarize here, we're not recommending that we suspend the policy without it really being necessary, and even if necessary, that we only suspend it so much as we must to deal with that particular situation.
Any other questions or comments? Eric, are there any public?
Do we have any public comments on the line, phone line related to the purchasing policy? Nothing, Mr. Chair.
If there are no other questions, then I'll entertain a motion to forward the resolution 2020-69 to the full board. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Proper motion, is there a second?
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Item 4, consideration of draft resolution 2020-105, resolution amending the City of Franklin internal control documentation to permit city administrator updates so that the documentation can remain consistent with policy and other approved changes.
Mr. Chair, I apologize for the long title, but on this item, the Finance Department is requesting a recommendation to the full board. In 2016, the state required local governments to document their internal controls. The board approved the documentation and amended it in 2018. Although not policy itself, the 80-page document is very specific and is impacted anytime there are policy updates or any other approved changes, such as in job descriptions or titles. Until the documentation is updated, it is not consistent with the other approved changes. This resolution requests approval for the city administrator to be able to update the documentation based on policy or other approved changes. The updates would be reported as an item approved on behalf of the board when made. And the first example we have is actually from purchasing. They have had some job titles and job description changes. And Brian actually has given us an example of the change that he believes should be made so that this will stay current with the internal controls we currently have. So Finance would maybe hope that a recommendation could be made to the full board to allow the city administrator to make these kind of changes going forward.
Any questions from any committee member? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve and forward to the full board.
So moved.
Proper motions are a second.
Second.
Proper motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Any questions? Maybe I'm skipped a step. Any questions from anyone in the public?
Any citizen comments related to the update and internal control documentation policy? Nothing, Alderman.
Okay, let's go to item 5, consideration of draft resolution 2020-95, a resolution adopting a grants policy for City of Franklin. Christine, your mic 1 are up.
Also on this item, the Finance Department is requesting a recommendation to the full board. Your meeting. I will remind you. Yeah, let me start again, Mr. Chair. Also on this item, the Finance Department is requesting a recommendation to the full board. And the reason for this policy is, and it's actually only a 2-page policy, is to provide citywide financial and compliance guidance. And one of the main things is 20 years ago, the city maybe only had a handful of grants. And now as we look at the monthly reports, we currently have 34 grants totaling $62 million among several departments. Prior to bringing this to committee, Finance provided the policy to the departments and received feedback that was included in the policy. Whereas the policy provides that departments are responsible for managing the grants, the policy indicates the Finance Department provides citywide oversight. The process, and this was actually a summary from when we got feedback, this process of this policy ensures we have executed grant contracts in place prior to making disbursements, that we have proper budgeting for the grants, that we have requests for reimbursements that are timely, we have recovery of indirect costs, where possible, and that the grants are properly documented, reported, and closed when those projects are completed. So the finance department would request a recommendation to the full board to actually develop and create this grants policy.
Any questions from any committee member? No questions? Eric, in order, do we need to check now? Or do we go ahead?
Let's
Check
go
now.
ahead and check before you vote, yeah. Any public comment related to the grants policy? Nothing, Mr. Chair?
Then I'll entertain a motion of approval to forward this to the full board. I need a motion.
So
Got
moved.
a motion. Second.
Proper motion by Alderman Speedy, second by Alderman Bransford. Do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote? Alderman Peterson, how do you vote? Let's go to Alderman Speedy. How do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Alderman Peterson, are you with us now? Lost, did we lose Alderman Peterson?
Mm-hmm. It says she left.
Alderman Peterson, are you back? Alderman Peterson, are you with us?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes to being here and yes to voting yes. Okay. Let's go to item number 6. Consider resolution 2020-104 authorizing the substitution of the form of collateral for the city's bank accounts in accordance with Tennessee Code annotated Title 9, Chapter 1.
Christine, I believe you're up on that.
I am, Mr. Chairman. This one is mine. And this resolution is a request from staff to substitute, in accordance with Tennessee state statute, the form of collateral on the city's bank accounts, which are held by Pinnacle Bank. And certainly at the highest level, the state does require collateral for public funds for the purposes of safety. There are a few different methods of providing safety to these public funds, and collateral is a term to require that all of those funds will be available as promised, and that they will be available and be held safely. Currently, Pinnacle Bank, they participate in a state pool for collateral of our city bank accounts. And they do pay a premium to the state. That is one method of collateral. They have requested a substitution to another form of collateral called insured cash sweep. And this form of collateral, it actually is something that both our comptroller, Mike Lowe, and myself are familiar with some of our previous banking relationships for public funds. It's been around for a long time, and it's a popular method of collateral. Pinnacle has just not used that with our accounts since they became our bank. However, insured cash sweep is a method in which a large number of banks, they become a syndicate together to provide collateral by using their FDIC insurance. And so if any one of the banks who are participating in the syndicate for some reason was hit on the collateral of a public account, the FDIC limits for all of the syndicate banks, which is up to $250,000, would be required to pay those public funds. It's a very common method. It certainly is allowed in the state of Tennessee. I personally checked with two of the references provided by Pinnacle for their other customers who use insured cash sweep. One was another city in Tennessee. One was a college in Tennessee that's required to have collateral. Both of them had been with them for a number of years. Both assured that their funds have always been available whenever they have requested those funds, and that they have not had any issues with that. Both Mike and I have deliberated over this request, and we believe it's an appropriate request. It's certainly it's an allowable request. However, state law does require that when a substitution of collateral is requested, that it must be acknowledged by the governing body of the local government. So that's why we are bringing this resolution to you. And there is not any additional cost to the city for this change in collateral. It is the responsibility of the bank to pay any sort of premiums that they incur for collateralization.
Any questions from any of the committee members? Any comments from concerned citizens?
Any citizen comments? Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Then I'll entertain a motion to forward Resolution 2020-104 to the full board for consideration.
So
Do I hear a
moved.
motion? Per Alderman
moved.
Bransford.
Second.
Alderman Peterson, let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Let's go to item 7. Report from State Controller on fiscal year 2019 annual financial report. Christine, do you want to start that off, or Mike?
Mr. Chair, this is a report only. Each year, the Comptroller's Office looks at the local government annual reports. And when they looked at the cities, they made 2 comments. The first comment was that when they looked at the annual report file, that it was not searchable. And Crossland, our city's auditors, and myself, we will make sure that for the 2020 report, that file that the Comptroller sees is definitely searchable. The second item is actually on me, because what they noted is they noted that we showed the TCRS pension assets in our statement with our city pension assets. And what they noted is they said that typically that goes in the notes and not in the statement. So what I was thinking was making it comparable to compare between the city's pension and the TCRS pension, but they are indicating that actually that should only be shown in the notes and not actually in the statement itself. So for 2020, we will make sure that we show it the way that the Comptroller's Office indicates. And actually our auditors, they've noted that they feel like this report actually was positive since there were only these 2 comments.
Any questions of Mike on from any of the committee members?
Mr. Chairman, may I make just a quick comment on Mike's second comment regarding the disclosure for the city's open pension fund? There have been a number of changes in accounting rules in the last couple of years, and we have some more changes coming up on reporting on pensions, and certainly the complexity and the changes in those accounting rules, as well as the timing of this was the first full actuarial report we have had on our open plan, contributed, I believe, to the comment from the state auditor. I spoke with the state auditor, Bethany Wilson, myself, as well as Mike, worked with Crossland, and certainly we are agreeable. We're open. We're going to make these changes next year, but there are changes in the very near future that we'll be making some slot reporting changes to our pension assets. And certainly because we have a closed single employer plan, And then we have an open multiple employer plan that is held by the state. What Mike was attempting to do was to present those two plans in as open and transparent a fashion as possible. But the accounting rules are making it a little challenging to do so, but we will certainly comply with the accounting standards.
Thank you.
Mr. Yes, I have a question.
Ask your question, Alderman Martin. Alderman Martin, do you still have your question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. When Mike made that first comment, what did he mean that the report wasn't searchable?
What that means is, that means if they're trying to locate a keyword like pension, that in essence, they weren't able to put that keyword in and it go to that spot in the file.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Then let's go to item 8, financial report for the third quarter of FY 2020. Mike, do you want to begin?
Mr. Chair, over the past 2 months in monthly reports, we've been showing the status of the general fund. And in those 2 previous months, we had actually been in a deficit. When we actually now pull together the third quarter report as of March, we actually are in a slight surplus position. But we all know that there's still a lot of unknowns what the revenue is going to be in the months of April and May. But we do know that at least as of the end of this quarter, we actually do show that slight surplus. As far as kind of individual items, local sales tax was 10% less this March compared to the previous March. And year to date now, local sales tax is slightly higher over last year by 1%. And we will actually know more after we see April revenue. And something that we've been trying to look for is what's the state experiencing? And what they've now just shown in sales tax is that they were 13% lower for April compared to last year. So once we see our numbers, we'll kind of see where we kind of compare to the state. And one thing that we have noticed during this period, development fees that are dependent on timing and type of development, they have continued to come in. Building permit revenue is 8% higher. Road impact fees are 60% more than last year. And facilities taxes were 27% more. In the street aid fund, gasoline taxes are 5% higher year to date. But the state indicated when its numbers that it has just come out with, that they're expecting motor fuel taxes to be less in the month of April. So we'll be looking for that number when that comes in. And maybe the last thing is the 2017 bonds, which is one of the funds we show in the report, it actually will be closed out here before the end of June, because in essence, all the bond funds need to be paid out by that time here in June. So that actually will, when we get to year end, be a fund that will actually be closed. And if anyone had any questions about anything else, or Christine, if you had any additional comments.
Questions? Any questions from any committee member? Eric, any questions on the phone?
Any public comment related to the third quarter financial report? Nothing.
If not, let's go to the monthly financial report for June 2020. Yes.
Mr. Chair, in the monthly reports, these are always kind of an update of what we see in the quarterly report. It does show the local sales tax being less than by 10% that we just talked about. It did show the development fees that have continued to come in, but I want to highlight maybe two items from monthly reports. We have added a new schedule on hotel motel taxes. And 2020 year to date compared to 2019 is actually 4% less than it was. And compared to the 2020 budget is 3% less. We anticipate this comparison will continue as we see April and May's numbers. So we'll be watching out for that as well. And the last item is for the conference center, the April loss was 32,000 and there was only revenue of 45,000 compared to 500,000 last April. And the thing about the conference center is it had fixed expenses of almost 60,000 that was compared to that $45,000 of revenue.
Any questions from any committee member? Any questions from the general public?
Any public comment related to the monthly financial reports for the month of June 2020? Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Any other business to come before the committee?
Mr. Chair, I have one quick thing to touch on. I just want to confirm with the committee, we typically do not meet in the month of July. We put you through a lot of time and effort getting through the budget process. And a lot of times that is a time where there's a lull in some of the items that come before you. So we, from a staff perspective, don't see a need to have to meet in July, but wanted to check in with the committee and make sure that was okay to take a 1 month off time for Budget and Finance Committee.
You've heard Eric's announcement as far as canceling or the meeting for next month. Any comments from any of the committee members? Are we all in agreement with that?
I'm in agreement with the administrator recommendations.
Alderman Peterson,
Yes.
Alderman Speedy,
In full agreement.
and the chair votes yes to that also. Any other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Proper motions are a second.
Second.
Let's do a roll call vote. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Bransford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Alderman Speedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned.